Well, hello everyone and welcome. Most of you know me by now, I hope, but my name is Megan Lebeda and I'm a program manager here with Kirkwood Corporate Training. I'm so excited to welcome you to the third webinar in our mental health awareness series. With us today, we have Eric Recker presenting his program From Torch to Win the Now. Burnout doesn't get the last word. Eric has worn a lot of hats as a husband, father, dentist, elite success coach, pilot, speaker, author, mountain climber, and recovering triathlete. He has pushed his life to the limit and discovered that what he was searching for wasn't at the top of the mountain. Today, in addition to running a thriving dental practice that he loves, Eric is committed to helping people learn to win the now and discover the life they were meant to live through his talks and coaching. We are very excited to hear from you today, Eric, so please take it away.
All right, Megan, thank you so much for having me, and welcome to everyone who's joining us today. I will give you a little bit of a caveat. This is normally either an hour keynote or a 2.5 to 3 hour workshop. So I'm going to do my best to condense it, try to hit some of the high points, and if you want more, I'd love to have a conversation about that. So my goal for today is to leave you with three things. I want to give you some hope. Hope is on short supply in our world right now, and I want to definitely give you some hope and belief that good days are ahead. Second of all, I want to give you some tools to be able to move forward in life with confidence. And also, I want to give you a snapshot of what I do for groups and for teams. So with that said, we'll go ahead and dive into things. So I want you to look at this scale here, and all it says, just a simple question: where am I? So I want you to take just a couple seconds and think on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being totally empty, like you just complete shell of a person, or 10 full. Everything's going great, you're in the groove, life couldn't get any better feeling. Just think in your mind, where are you? Don't overthink it, just think, what's my number? Because the reality is that I lied to myself about this. I lied to myself about this for a number of years. For most of my life, honestly. I was acting like I was a 7 or 8 when the reality was that I was a 3 or a 4. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to actually give you 3 ways to kind of measure where you're at. Mental health, a lot of it is about self-awareness. And if we aren't self-aware, and if we aren't honest about where we are at, then we tend to project a false number onto the world. And when we do that, over time, we get what is called burnout. And this is the best picture that I've found for burnout. Literally, it feels like our hair is on fire, but we feel helpless to be able to do anything about it. And so I am, as Megan said, I am a practicing dentist. That is my day job. That is what I have done for 22 years. But I got to a point where I was crazy burned out. I was having panic attacks. I was having chest pain. I was having heart palpitations, all of those kind of things. And one of the ground zero moments for me was that I was told by my front desk that our server had crashed in our office. And that happened to be the day that I was the only dentist in our practice. Our practice is normally a 3 dentist, 6 hygienist practice. So it was myself and 5 hygienists that day. Through a series of normal events in medical practice, I was 30 minutes behind, and the server had crashed. So I was downstairs in the server room, 30 minutes behind, trying to figure out how to get the server to work again. And I had 5 hygienists waiting for me to check their patients. And I was brought to the ground in a full-on panic attack. I don't wish a panic attack on anyone, and any of you who have had one of those realize that they are horrific things. They are scary things. But here I was in that panic attack, and I literally felt paralyzed. I could not do anything. And fortunately, a song popped into my head from a band called Switchfoot called I Dare You to Move. And one of the lyrics in that song was, I dare you to pick yourself up off the ground. And against everything that my body wanted to do, I wanted to escape, I wanted to get away, but I couldn't. I had to be in that moment. So I had to pick myself off of the ground. I had to go back and recover from that 30 minutes behind. Shoot, it was only 9:30 in the morning and I was already that far behind. So I had to go back, step back into that and check all those hygienists and get back on track. But I knew that there was a problem. And this was a point that I couldn't escape anymore. But the problem is that I tried to go around my problem. I tried to go around burnout. I felt that the only solution for me was to sell my dental practice and walk away. I felt that was the only thing that I could do. And so I made plans to sell my dental practice. I was going to sell it to another one of my associates. They were going to buy it, and then I was going to walk away. And then in January of 2021, we were about a month away from when the sale of the practice was going to happen. And the associate who was going to buy the practice from me, and I had so much hope I was going to be able to walk away. Never mind, I didn't have a darn clue what I was going to do with myself after I walked away. But on that morning, he was in a horrific car accident. He survived, but we were not able to complete the transaction. And so here I was. And I realized something so powerful in that moment that if I would have walked away from my practice, I would not have been solving my burnout problem. I would not have been making things better. I just would have been escaping. So it was time to figure out, what am I going to do with this thing? I cannot go around it. I have to smash through it. But it started with being honest with myself. I just felt like this is how life happened. And then I got to a point where I was building a new dental practice. I was buying the practice from my father, who was also a dentist. I was training for 2 Ironman triathlons. I was serving on 5 boards, and I was coaching both of my kids in soccer. Well, duh, of course, that's insane. Nobody can do that. But I didn't pick up all those things at once. It was kind of a slow fade into things that continued to stack and stack. And I said yes to more things and yes to more things. And eventually I got to this point that was not sustainable. So I figured out that I had to move forward. So how do you move forward? What does that even look like? So through the process, I have written a book called That Damn Analogy, and it's available on Amazon. And I think it is a really interesting concept. And I think it's something that we absolutely need to pay attention to. So in that season, when I was so burned out, the problem is that my inflow was not supporting my outflow. So I'll give you the quick gist of the book. Basically, we are a dam. That's what we do. Our whole life is about controlling the flow of energy through us. So we have an inflow, right? That's the lake. That's our reserves. That's what we have on hand. And then we have an outflow, which is the river that's below the dam. And that river is all the things that we do, all the things we do to impact the world, all the things we do throughout our normal day, all of those things. So we're pretty good at the outflow, but we're not very good at the inflow. And I know I can't see your hands right now, and nobody else can see you, but raise your hand if you think that makes some sense to you. Like, you get your stuff done, but you're maybe not so good at taking care of yourself. Let me just tell you this, that at some point it is going to catch up to you. And that's why I put that number up there at the beginning. So here's another picture to illustrate it. So there's the dam. This is Lake Red Rock. It's about 5 miles away from where I live in Pella, Iowa. And so I got this concept while I was actually riding across the dam one day on my bike. I just heard, "We are the dam." And I thought, well, that's weird. But as I have really dove into it and really tried to understand more about it, it makes sense. So what happens when there isn't much on the lakeside? Well, some things on the bottom of the lake, there actually used to be a town underneath Lake Red Rock. So if the water level gets too low, there's a possibility we're going to hit a snag when people are out boating or trying to enjoy the lake. People who are at the beach, if the water level's really low, they have to walk all the way down to the water so they can enjoy it. And then guess what? At the end of the day, you got to walk back up. So a low lake level is dangerous. And then when we have a high lake level, when we've paid too much attention to taking care of ourselves at the expense of not helping others, then we look like ego. We look like a flooded lake that has a whole bunch of debris in it. And we also can't enjoy that lake very much. So trying to figure out where that sweet spot is. Where is that spot where we are finding a nice balance between our inflow and our outflow? And recently a hydroelectric plant was built. And I love how that ties into the analogy because our outflow is now used to help other people. The water that flows through that dam used to just flow through that dam. Now it flows through the hydroelectric plant. And that hydroelectric plant, the energy from that can be used to help people power their homes. So how can we channel our outflow so that it is useful for others, so that it impacts the world? So I love this concept. And when I teach this in bigger groups, we go really deep into this. And it's super fun because most people have been really good at the outflow part and not so good at the inflow part. So here is the equation that I could not escape. When I was burned out, I was overcommitted and I was not taking care of myself. So for those of you who like math, you can write down burnout equals overcommitted plus not taking care of myself. You heard what I said about all those things I had going on. Obviously, I had plenty of stuff going on. Honestly, obviously I had a lot of commitments. What I did not have is a lot of self-care. So it's something that I don't think we can escape. We need to learn what are the things that fill us back up. And yes, it seems selfish, but here's the thing. We have to be a little bit selfish so that we can be selfless. I'm going to say that again for those in the back. We have to be a little bit selfish so that we can be selfless. If we don't have anything to give, how in the heck are we going to sustainably pour into our families, pour into our teams, pour into our friends? We end up just withdrawing because we don't have anything in the tank. So let's go through those 3 different ways that I have for us to measure where we're at. I don't know how many of you use smartwatches. I was against smartwatches for the longest time. I said, we don't need all this information on our watch. And then I started learning about some of the information we can have on our watch. So one of the things, if you have some kind of a feature on here, this is a Garmin watch. I know that Apple has a different feature that shows kind of where you're at throughout the day. I want you to look at that number 100 on there. So basically what that 100 indicates is that I slept pretty well and didn't overextend myself the day before. That means I started out about as good as I can get. But we're about midway through the day here. This has been a day when I was at work and I was seeing a lot of patients, and you can see the body battery drain throughout the day. So it's not a one-time thing for us to recover. It's not we can just go away for a week vacation and all is good. No, self-care, I'm sorry to say, but we can't escape it. Self-care is something we need to pay attention to every single day. What are we doing to get that body battery back up? And where are we on that body battery scale? Is it the end of the day and we're at a 2? Or did we make it to the end of the day and we're still in the 30s or 40s? We still have a little bit left in the tank. Or are we having a day like this? I overextended myself the day before this, didn't sleep very well, so I started off at a 79. And yes, the danger with these metrics is that we take these sort of as gospel truth, but we don't have to do that. These are just another tool for us to understand where we're at. So look at that day. That was getting pretty close to the end of the day, and there's that really sharp dip in the middle. That is when I did a workout. So yeah, it was good to do the workout, but it definitely drained me. So what am I going to have to do that night? Sleep's going to be pretty important that night, right? I have to recover. I have to get that 13 back as close to 100 as we can. And here's another example. This is when I was sick recently. I don't get sick very often, but boy, when I get sick, ooh, it's bad. And this was all the things that I won't explain here on the webinar, but look at those days. Those are not days that I can have a big workout. Those are not days that I can overextend myself. And probably for the next day or maybe a couple days, I'm gonna have to be really careful with my recovery. I'm gonna have to be really careful with making sure that I fill my bucket back up, or I am going to be operating from emptiness. I'm going to be on the left side of that equation that I showed you earlier. So that's body battery. And here we come back to this. Why is this important? Well, I'm going to give you a way to remember this. And my kids make fun of me like crazy for this. My wife rolls her eyes. But when I've done this with groups, it sticks. And I don't have enough room here to show you on the camera, but picture this. We've all been to wedding receptions. We've all heard of this. There's a line dance that goes to the left, to the left, to the left, and then to the right, to the right, to the right. So look at this scale. Life moves us to the left. Life moves us more towards that empty part. All of the stuff that we see, the negativity and comparison on social media, the news, all of the stuff that's going on in our lives, that moves us to the left. We have to figure out how to move ourselves to the right. So life moves us to the left, to the left, to the left. We have to figure out and be very conscious about how we move ourselves to the right. So yes, I'm sure you're probably like, this guy's lost it. What is he thinking? But I suspect you might remember that. And the next time that you're at a wedding reception, they're doing that line dance, you think, oh yeah, wonder if I've been doing a good enough job taking care of myself. And the final one I want to show you is the old fuel tank. And this is one that is in my book, and we dive into this a little bit deeper in the book. But where are you on the fuel tank scale? And I don't know about all of you, but I grew up in Iowa, and sometimes the winters can be pretty harsh. So it was important for me to make sure, or it was beaten into me, I guess we could say, by my dad, hey, don't ever be below a half a tank in the winter. And yes, that's important in the winter, but think about it. In our lives, if we're chronically running below half a tank, we are not reaching our full potential. We are not having enough in our reserves for those big things that happen in our lives. So what if we have that huge project that's happening at work and we really need to be able to pour into that and we're at a quarter tank? What if we have something that we need to help our kids with and it really is going to take everything we have, but we're at an eighth of a tank? Where's that going to come from? We're not going to be able to give it our best. So it's super important, whichever one of these three ways you use to remind yourself and be aware of where you're at, it's important to do that. So I'm going to move on here a little bit to, what do we do about this? If we're way to the left, I mean, Eric, you've done a great job explaining how we get there. And again, in the longer workshop, we go really in depth about this. But one of the biggest solutions is the concept of win the now. This concept has been absolutely life-changing for me. And win the now is the mindset of presence. We hear a lot about mindset and presence and being in the moment and all of that kind of stuff. Well, what does that specifically look like? So I heard a lot of stuff about win the day or win your month or win the opportunity, whatever it is. To me, I see patients in my dental practice, and between having conversations with my team, seeing patients, doing exams for my hygienist, all of the different things that I can do, I might have 60 conversations in a day. It's not uncommon at all. So how do I find wins in those moments? So basically, I break my day down into 15-minute chunks, and each of those 15-minute chunks are a now. And then I look at those times, what does a win look like? Okay, a win might look like a great conversation with a patient. A win might look like helping somebody who's anxious about a procedure, getting them calmed down a little bit. A win might look like really listening to someone's concerns. A win might look like a good interaction with one of my hygienists or my team members. And then I have another now that's coming up after that. And what do the wins look like in that? The reality is we're going to take some losses. And I used to be so reactive. I would come home at the end of the day and my wife would say, "Hey, Eric, how was your day?" And I would say, "Well, this happened." But now that I have changed my mindset to looking for wins, I will still tell her about the things that happened, but I'm more likely to share the wins that happened throughout the day. So whatever your day looks like, maybe a now is a 1 hour meeting. And what does a win look like in that meeting? A win might look like you showing up, being prepared, being undistracted, having something to share in the meeting, being able to contribute, all of those different things. So it's breaking our day down into the different now moments and understanding what a win looks like. Then you go home and maybe you have dinner as a family. What does a win look like there? Maybe the phones aren't in our hands. Maybe we're fully present, having conversation, talking and listening, being reciprocal. So I find myself being someone who's always seeking wins. And it feels good to find wins. Because here's the thing, when I was so burned out, I was stuck in the past or worried about the future. Always. So if I was at home, I was thinking about work. If I was work, I was thinking about something I hadn't done at home or training that I had to do for a race or whatever it was. Or I was worried about, I might be home, but I'm worried about a patient that I was going to see the next day or something that's coming up. And it just sapped all my energy. And I was in a different place with my mind and my body. I just was. And it wasn't fair to my family, and it wasn't fair to my team at the office, and it wasn't fair to my patients. Now I find myself in the same place, mind and body, and it has been a game changer. So I encourage you to try to be in the present moment. Notice for now, just be self-aware enough to notice that you are drifting away from the moment. And whenever you get the chance to come back, just come back to the moment. Take a deep breath. Remember that the moment, the current moment where we're here right now, this is where the magic happens. One thing that really distracts us from living in the present is the false sense of urgency. And that is part of my first book that I wrote. I talk about the false sense of urgency being this background app that runs in the back of our minds. I like to say it's right here at the base of our skull where you can't really reach it super well, but it's there. And it is the voice of should. My dad always told me never should on yourself because it gets kind of messy. So how many of you hear this voice in your head? You're saying, "Eric, I want to take care of myself. I want to recover. I want to do all that stuff, but there's all these obligations, all these things I should be doing. I should be working on this. All my time should be productive. I should be going to do this. I should be going to do this," when the reality is that our bodies are crying out for rest and recovery. So for now, just be aware of that false sense of urgency, and coming back to the present moment is a great way to shut that thing down. It's always going to be there. It's always going to try to tell you what you should be doing. But once you start experimenting with recovery and letting your body start to feel better, feel more alive, you're going to be able to tell it where to go. All right, so I want to offer this as I know we just barely scratched the surface on what Win the Now means. I'd love to talk more with you or your team about it, but for now, here is a QR code that you can scan. This will give the 5 principles of Win the Now. These are 5 things that I do on a daily basis to try to help me get in the moment and stay in the moment. So you can grab that if you want to. I know the webinars can be recorded, so you can grab it later if you want to as well. Another thing that I provide for teams when I do this is 30 days to win the now, because our brains have this amazing thing called neuroplasticity. And what that allows us to do is change the way our brain thinks. And so it's 30 days worth of habits. It's things you can do each day to be in the present moment. And after you do that for a month or a couple months, your mind starts to think differently. We can actually rewire our minds. So I'd love to share that with you as well. And we're coming about to the end of our time here. So I want to just give you a couple things going forward. So self-awareness, everything starts with self-awareness. If we are not aware of of ourselves, where we're at, what our number is, what our fuel tank is, what our body battery is, then we're just going to operate like it's higher than it actually is. I would love to do either a keynote or a workshop with your teams for that dam analogy. It's a lot of fun. It's super interactive. I've gotten amazing feedback from it, and I have it on the calendar for several times the rest of the summer. So I'd love to add you or your team to it. The QR code here, there is a chance for you to grab a 30-minute strategy session with me. If you want to do it through technology, you can certainly do that. You can also reach me at eric@ericrecord.com. Super easy. And one more thing, I just want to encourage you to live present in your life and take care of yourself. You cannot take care of other people if you do not take care of yourself. So I appreciate you all being here. We'll leave it with the slide here for the Mental Health Summit coming up. And with that, Megan, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Eric. That was great. I don't know about any of you, but I have lots of little sticky notes that I took during that. So I can't wait to hear the full presentation. And for any of you interested, Eric is going to be participating in a brand new product that we have coming out this year in March. And he'll be doing this presentation. So please feel free to pay attention to our social media pages, and we'll be posting about that hopefully very soon. So be on the lookout. And as Eric said, the Mental Health Summit is still coming up on the 23rd. You can still register and attend. We'd love to have you. Do we have any questions for Eric that we'd like to ask before we wrap up today? Okay. Well, seeing none, I am launching just a quick poll, if you wouldn't mind taking it before you leave. Just 3 really quick questions. Should take you just a couple seconds here, asking about how you enjoyed today's webinar. Thank you. I see a few of you jumping in there. Awesome. All right. Well, that's all we have for you today, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. Eric, thank you so much. This was wonderful. I hope we get to hear again from you very soon. And don't be strangers, everyone. Find us on social media on LinkedIn and Facebook. And if you would like to reach us by email, you can reach us at corporatetraining@kirkwood.edu. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.